every single one of them feels like they're doing just enough AI to stay behind. They all think everybody's going faster than them. They all think they're being lapped. Like, it's pretty crazy. What's freaked people out the most is people are scared and searching for how do I still put what I thought was my human contribution, that creative spark, that divine inspired thing that I do into this. And if I don't get to do that, what do I get to do?
What's so different about this paradigm shift in comparison to the internet, to the web, to everything else?
When LLMs first came out 3-4 years ago, I kind of recognized it as one more equalizing wave of technology. I would say this is definitely the biggest one. How it's changed everything is, it's completely crazy.
What do you think is a more important skill right now? To be analytical or to be creative?
It's not artificial intelligence. That's
Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Liam. I'm excited to be here.
You've been building internet publishing platforms before Google existed. You built a multitude of startups, sold some. You've also built for TMZ, the White House, Salesforce, CNN. You at one point were riding horses in Brooklyn, and now you're the CTO of WordPress VIP. What can you tell me about your story to date? What is a thread that's common amongst all these ventures and all these things that you do?
Totally. So the danger of only blogging once every year or so is the last blog post is about writing how I used to ride horseback in high school in Brooklyn when I was a kid, and how I visited the stables recently. So we're going to skip that. You did mention some cool things. So you talked about Google. I forgot that when my friend Jason and I built a blog publishing company in the 2000s, and like we both had publishing in our blood. We'd done print magazines. We'd done a lot of things before the web. I had a career for a couple of years, only a few years before the web. But from 95 on, it was building websites for brands you've heard of, only brands you've heard of. Very fortunate. Like you said, you named a few, but like 1995, I did the first TV Guide website and the first Business Week website. You've heard of both of those brands. I'm very, very fortunate, right? By the time Google rolls around, my friend and I had this blog network and we were running Google AdSense, and Google had not IPO'd yet. And in their filings for IPOing, this is one of my favorite things about Google and me, is they actually listed 2 examples. So when they were IPOing, Google wasn't making money. And they had to convince the world to like put their savings into this business, right? And buy their stock. And they said, like, we think we have a business over here. It's a way for sites to make money. We think we can pull these things together. And they said, we have 2 examples of companies who are making money using our AdSense. And one of them is these 2 idiots from Brooklyn. And they're on track to make $1 million a year. And if they can do it, anybody can do it. And it was kind of funny that like we were listed in their S1 filing or whatever the thing was for Google. So yes, been doing this longer than all these things existed. That's why I shaved my head so I don't look so old. And the through line for me is I figured this out like halfway through my career. I think of things in terms of publishing. I think of things in terms of content and deadlines. I would say I have publishing in my DNA and my blood, right? Like print magazines, a love of like holding a thing that you make, that kind of thing. But I would say that, and I say this all the time, like I build software that makes creative people more powerful. So I'm usually not the person driving the tank, but I will give you a tank that will make you be able to do better, your job better than you've ever done it. And if you look at what I've done for all these years, helping people build and crank out content, or like helping launch TMZ, or helping build Engadget, all these things. That was great when it was like, this takes me 7 clicks, Brian. Can you get it down to 5 or 2 or 1 or 0? That's cool. Today, it's all changed. Like you have the ability to give people powers that they just dreamed of this whole time. And I just love that between end of 2025, beginning of 2026, the whole game changed. So the skills transfer, I'm excited about the future, but we are not, this is like, it's like we just invented fire. It's pretty crazy.
What's so different about this paradigm shift in comparison to the internet, to the web, to everything else, to mobile, to...
Yeah, this is an awesome question. So I've even before this, well, I guess when LLMs first came out 3-4 years ago, that kind of thing, I kind of recognized it as one more what I call equalizing wave of technology. So what happens is some people have an advantage, and then the rest of the world does not have an advantage. But some wave of technology comes along, right? Science turns into technology. Science applied to a human problem is what technology is, right? So some wave of technology comes along and it levels the playing field. We're all at the same level. The first one in my career was open source. So it used to be when you make a website with a database or any kind of product, any kind of app, you would have to pay Oracle, Microsoft, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for software, right? Like to get a database. You would have to do all these things. Open source came along and I said, actually, MySQL, it's good enough and it's free, right? Apache, you run your own web server. You don't have to pay, Netscape or AOL or these companies that had a paid web server. So open source kind of leveling the playing field for everybody. And now my little business has as good a foundation technology stack as these big giant companies do. That's crazy. The next one was the web. So New York Times has a, print, factories for printing stuff, and they have this big thing and a big team and all this stuff. But then the web comes out and like they have nytimes.com. I got, Engadget.com, autoblog.com, like whatever our things were. Like we're on equal footing and we're both starting from zero and we both have a chance, right? Next wave was the cloud so they had a data center. We didn't have a data center, but now I have a credit card. I have 30 servers, 300 servers, right? Like we equalize. The next wave was mobile, which wouldn't have been possible without the cloud, without the web, without open source, without Linux, right? They all build on top of each other. And then the fifth one in my lifetime is LLMs. And I would say this is definitely the biggest one. And it's just how it's changed everything it's completely crazy. It's just big, kind of wide open. And one more thing I like to think about. So I like to look backwards to figure out where we're going. It's a big challenge right now when things change weekly. What's next, right? This whole agent thing, open clause, all these little bots. What's next after that? You don't have to wait 2 years to find out what's next. It comes out next week. And what's next is like, oh, they're on a loop or they're on a harness. Now there are a fleet of them with sub agents. And like, you just keep moving up the stack of kind of like, how fast are you going up? And it's never been going faster. And so looking backwards helps you think about what got us here. A very quick story. There's a computer history museum in Silicon Valley near Google's campus. And when you go there, it's a very interesting place because you look at like the 1910s. Here's all the technology from this. And you go through a room and you see all the stuff they had. And it was mind blowing at the time. 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. During the war, the Enigma machine, cryptography is kind of invented, but in white papers. It wasn't real. And all of these things every year, the stuff in the 80s, the stuff 10 years ago, groundbreaking, Bluetooth, phones, whatever, all irrelevant now. And we just build on top of it. And whatever you did that was cool in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, whatever, somebody else is going to build on that and you'll be forgotten. So it's very humbling. But looking at that lets you see, okay, what are the normal ways that things go up the scale? And what are the normal ways that things advance? So you can maybe get a few days ahead of it.
Mm. Something I'm really interested about you is your kind of balance between analytical thinking and creative thinking. I look back at like your job history, for example, and your education history. I think you majored in physics and you've got this minor in art. And then you're working with these publishers, these newsrooms, and I'm so struck by you building these CMS systems to enable creative people to work. But you're pretty creative yourself. Talk to me about like that tension between those two things for you.
It's cool. So I've explained this to my kids a lot, which is very funny, which is my superpower is that I'm not great at anything. And what I mean by that is, if you just think of art and science, like the Renaissance thing, like you're artist scientist, Leonardo da Vinci, right? Artist scientist. I'm not like, I'm a good artist and I'm good at technology, but I'm not a 10 in either one or a 9. So let's say I'm a 7 or an 8, right? In both categories. I've known throughout my entire career, if I'm competing with an artist, they're probably a 2 or a 1 technically. So I will do things on the computer. I will do things with like software that will just I'll win, right, against them because I'm good enough at art, but I'm great at technology, right? Flip it to people making software. People who make software versus me, I guarantee you they're better coders. I guarantee you they studied computer science. They studied these things. They have training, Java certificates or whatever you have. But I'm going to make something people love using. I'm going to make something that feels more personal. I'm going to make something that has that craft, that artistic angle to it. So and then also when I build a tool for you to use, I'm trying to build something for me. I'm trying to build something for somebody who isn't. If I was a technical god, if I was a 10, I would just code everything. But I'm building a CMS for non-coders. I'm building tools for people to do something that they don't have to think and code because I don't want to think and code. So I end up, because of this sort of balance and because of not being great at either one or perfect or the best at either one, being able to make something that people really like to use that makes them more effective. So there's definitely, I wish I was a comic book artist today, and I wish I was working at NASA on rockets. Like I wish I'd pursued either one of those to the end, but instead I get to work with NASA. We host them on our platform at WordPress VIP. Like I get to talk to them about rocket science stuff. I have an uncle that worked at NASA, right? So I'm around it, but I think I'm in the place I was born to be.
What do you think's a more important skill right now? To be analytical or to be creative? We run an enterprise training arm of our business, a B2B training arm, and we speak to a lot of people. And there's this kind of narrative that coding is getting so good that in 5, 10 years, we won't even need people that are analytical. We won't need to code to be able to just speak to a machine and build something, right? And I speak to other CEOs and C-suites, and they talk about how they're kind of investing in the creativity of their employees. What's your kind of opinion on this?
I think so. I watched the movie The Founder with my daughter like a month ago. It's the story of Ray Kroc, who sort of invented McDonald's, but he didn't. Two other guys invented it, but theirs would have never been more than 3 locations. He took it global. So effectively,
Mm.
looking back, kind of like the way Zuckerberg, invented Facebook in the movie. You like, took it from 2 guys. This guy also went and took the idea and he took it global. And I think about that a lot. Like, how do you scale that kind of stuff? When you take McDonald's all the way to what it is now, billions and millions of burgers being served every day, you might think, okay, they don't need a chef anymore. They don't need somebody creative. They don't need a visionary for their menu. But they absolutely do. Somebody has to set what are the standards, what's the taste. Now McDonald's is the extreme angle. There's nothing bigger than that, right? But if you're running, Chipotle's or something, or some other smaller, or Dunkin' Donuts, I don't care what it is, or a small, 3 restaurant chain or whatever, somebody at some point has to have the taste to decide what people are going to love. So you can automate the heck out of things, but at some point somebody still has to have that creative angle to it. And so I don't know that you can pick which one should you be, analytical or creative, because I also don't pick. I kind of use both, right? But just enough of both. Um, and it makes me think about how when people look at AI and their fear of AI, the reason they're so afraid 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when this revolution started, was because it's not artificial intelligence. It's artificial creativity. And everybody expected artificial intelligence. And what we got was artificial creativity. And that nobody was ready for that. And I'll give you an example. About, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, I would have these dinners, one of my old companies, and I would go into LA. I lived in New York, so I would go into LA, and I would get together a bunch of just my coolest friends. So technology people, creative people, musicians. One was like a manager of comedians and in their TV and movies, like people you've heard of. Like these are cool people who I just loved hanging out with. And we would kind of open with a question and go like an icebreaker, go around the room. And my favorite icebreaker was, of everybody in the room, which one of us is going to it has a job, which is the last one the robots are going to take. So when robots come into our, and we called them robots at the time, now it'd be bots or AI, right? So when the AI comes through and takes your job, which one of us gets to keep doing our job last? Everybody else gets taken. And everybody thinks, okay, taxis, those will be absolutely automated. Robots can do taxis. Robots can work in a factory. They can move stuff around. They can make Hershey's Kisses on a conveyor belt. They can do all these kinds of jobs, but they can't do my job. Even Mark Andreessen says this, is like, they can do anything but pick good companies to back. And I'm like, is he joking? Like, there's nothing that they keep do. Is he saying that because everybody says like my job's the last one we'll take? But the 2 examples we had at that dinner that I remember, one was a bot could never, AI could never write and perform a great 5 or 10 minute comedy routine at a comedy club here in LA. And they could never write like a 22-minute sitcom. They just couldn't do like there's just such a human something to that. And when the LLMs came, the first thing they could do, write a great comedy routine and a 22-minute sitcom. Like nobody was expecting that. And the joke is like, we're doing the dishes and the robots are writing poetry. We're doing all the things that we thought the robots would do. And instead they're doing the fun stuff. What the heck? This is not what I signed up for. And so that's, I think, what's freaked people out the most is people are scared and searching for how do I still put what I thought was my human contribution, that creative spark, that divine inspired thing that I do, into this. And if I don't get to do that, what do I get to do? So I think a lot of people feel lost and worried for that reason. I think you can flip it back and find so many things where taste and the human touch matter.
Mm. How do you approach that conversation with your kids when they look up to you and they ask, "What should I do for career work?" Like, how do you ask that?
Okay. So I have 3 kids. My last one is getting into college. 2 of them are in arts things. So the oldest one does music technology, Pro Tools, like makes an album on his laptop kind of stuff. My middle one is becoming a lawyer. I don't know why. And then my youngest one is musical theater. So mostly like arts related stuff. And they have very strong opinions about AI. So we're not really having a conversation about what are you going to do with your life. because like a couple of them get to be artists and the things I never got to do. So that's cool. But they do have very strong opinions about AI. Like every time you ask ChatGPT something, it's wasting 6 bottles of water. Or, because they're creators, all they hear from their friends is like, AI is just ripping us all off and putting all our hard work into the machine. Now the machine's going to do our job and we're not going to ever have a job. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to have decades of Broadway performances in front of us that aren't going to be done by robots. I don't think people want to go see robots dance, do Hamilton, right? It's not, I don't think that's going to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. Holograms, robots, whatever. So I don't know. I think they're going to be fine, but it's very interesting. Just talking to them about AI is not easy, and I try to explain. My whole job is to find these like efficiencies and empower people, and take the next wave of equalizing tech that just handed us all a magic wand, and figure out if we all have a magic wand, how can I be remarkable? If we're all like flying around and gods and shooting stuff out of our hands, how do I rise above that and do something remarkable? And it's a challenge. I don't, I don't, I don't agree with them on AI at all. It's really funny. You would think young people adopt technology and old people are like, that's not what I was, that's not what we did when I was a kid. It's the opposite in my house. I am so deep into everything that's going on right now. And they're like, don't talk to me about that. That's so dirty. It's funny.
It's hilarious. Bring that into what you're doing today. So with your role as CTO at like WordPress, from what I understand, you're kind of running in two different angles here. So you're running like the hosting platform WordPress VIP, but you're also doing the analytics as well. So for people who don't
So
know this, kind of take me through like your day to day. What are the two biggest problems you're trying to solve right now?
absolutely. So we talked before how we started in like publishing when print before the web came out. Once the web came out, I figured out you could hook a database up to a website. People could type things in forms and they could fill the website with content instead of with code. All of that led me to building like 25 different CMSs and then ending up at the WordPress company Automattic. And so I am in the WordPress VIP division, which is the enterprise division. So we're like 200-ish people doing enterprise work inside a massive consumer company that runs WordPress.com, hundreds of millions of blogs, Tumblr, journaling apps, all sorts of other things, right? WooCommerce. But mainly it's a giant consumer company the same way Apple is a giant consumer company. And we're like the Salesforce inside that, like the very enterprisey IBM type little division. And so what we get to do is we don't have hundreds of millions of customers you've never heard of, like one person websites. We have a couple thousand customers that are like, News Corp, NBC, the White House, Salesforce, NASA, like those kinds of things. So we run the biggest, most important WordPress websites on earth. We also have Parsley for analytics, which is a fantastic kind of like real-time dashboard for newsrooms. So if you have 1,000 people at the Wall Street Journal, 1,000 people at whatever, you're using these tools to watch your performance in real time. And so I've taken that whole like CMS career and I'm here. And it's so funny because like they're so much fun to work with, and it's so nice to be invited to cutting edge, world leading, publishing things, the giants of media, the titans of all these things, right? And to watch what they stress out about. And I will tell you, like back to your AI angle, we had an event where we just basically surveyed all the customers, and the quote that came out of it was every single one of them feels like they're doing just enough AI to stay behind. They all think everybody's going faster than them. They all think they're being lapped. Like, it's pretty crazy. So I get to see the most extreme problems, the most DDoS attacks on a website, the biggest databases, the most scale. So everybody that runs into like, I can't do this myself anymore. Can you just run this for me? They come to us, and we only see extreme challenges. And when you're watching those extreme challenges and when you're trying to solve those things, it is really interesting to look at how does AI change this? How does technology meet this sort of moment? And it's a lot of fun, but it's early. Everybody's slow. Everybody feels like they're slow. And I don't think anybody goes fast enough. Even the people going fast don't go fast enough. So like, no offense, I love our customers, but like our job is to help them. If you think about it, we kind of have to help them do things, like two things: go really fast and just not break anything. So it's like, how do you kind of work both the accelerator and the brake, and like keep them, as fast as possible, but just safe enough. And so that's kind of the thing that we do. We have, like I said, you can't work with, what is it, the White House and NASA without being like FedRAMP, moderate authorization, risk, all the security stuff. So how do you do that, but still also let them go faster than their competition? And that's our juggling act is, push, push, push. but not too
I
much.
want to talk about fast in terms of products and features, and I want to talk about breaks in terms of. I know that you guys block crawlers, for example, and there's a bunch of kind of technology you have on that end. But before we do, frame what trust means to you in this environment.
That's really interesting. I'll give you a couple of answers. So one, I love that you don't. I love that you don't think about what we do as a technology thing, or at least your question doesn't think about it that way. I like to say that like the first 10 years of VIP was all about selling peace of mind, and then the next 10 years is going to be about like I forget what it is, but it's like capitalizing on the technology, taking it to the next level, like really like where we can go with all of this, like the possibilities. But if you look back just at that peace of mind part, for a long time, WordPress VIP was mostly support engineers, just making sure that your stuff didn't fall over. Like you had people around you who were tied into core WordPress. Co-founder of WordPress is here. You have all this stuff, and so it was really we weren't selling you, gigabytes of throughput or storage or X number of page views of traffic every month. We were selling you the fact that when you're ad week and you cover the Super Bowl, and that is your biggest day to be online, and your host before had you offline for 14 hours, like, or 4 hours, or whatever the number was, like you come to us because you don't want that. You're not here to buy servers, hosting containers, bandwidth, whatever. You're here for peace of mind. And so trust to me is that we can't say no. Like if you have a WordPress challenge and you come to the WordPress company Automattic and we say, I don't know, it's too big. We can't do it. Like something's wrong with us. So we literally are just the people who can't say no. And like you flip it. We're very easy to trust. Like we're all about trust. So I hope that answers your question about trust.
And let me guess that part of trust as well is like when they come to you and they speak to you, they speak to a human that ensures that this won't happen. They don't just select a drop down on a pricing option that says this won't happen, right? They need that
Yeah.
human reassurance.
It's funny if you look at, we talked about this internally recently, like if you look at a SaaS grid feature comparison between like us and any other WordPress host, and I don't think of us as a WordPress host. I think of our competition as Adobe and Sitecore and like, giants. I don't think of our competition as like other WordPress hosts because we just have the biggest websites. Like they can have hundreds of millions of small websites. I don't care. But if you look at that, it's very hard to say like how many sites can I have, how many multi-sites, how much throughput, but you're missing this whole like the customer advisory board that you get invited to be in there with like the heads of media companies and all these things. Like there are so many things we do that aren't a product feature, right? Customer advisory board, our media forum, I forget what they call it, media something forum in New York City, like events, all of this stuff, that whole ecosystem around that. You can't really put that in a SaaS grid and say, ours is worth this much, theirs is worth that much. It's just a whole bunch of stuff that we bring, that experience. Like another thing I like to say is like, if you take your site, which you may not care about security at all, but if you're hosted on the same platform as the White House, it's kind of like staying in a hotel when like a world leader is there. It's probably the most secure the hotel's ever going to be. There's guards, secret security, whatever they are on every floor, right? They're checking every room. It's probably going to be the best. You get the benefits of all that security, even though you didn't want it. So if you get to move your site into the gated community that the White House and NASA live in, you get the benefits of that gated community, even though you didn't come here for the gated community.
Give me 30 seconds and I'll give you the secret to effective AI implementation. If you like the AI report, you already know what we're about. Cutting through the hype and helping leaders actually use AI. At Upscale, we're more than a newsletter or even this podcast. We work with global organizations like the Society for Human Resource Management and Fisher Phillips Law Partners to train entire departments, boosting efficiency and productivity by an average of 41% in just weeks. If you want your company ahead of the curve instead of chasing it, book a free strategy call at upscale.com. That's UPSCAILE.com. Schedule today and future-proof your tomorrow.
Okay. These customers come into the gated community. They have this trust. They have the security. Now, they've heard of AI and they want to go fast with it. You have content intelligence. You have AI agents. You have now, from what I understand, MCP adapters. Talk to me about what going fast means for WordPress VIP.
Yeah. This is interesting. I'm thinking about it a different way right now because of how you asked the question. So a lot of those things, the MCP adapters, those things, they have to get into core WordPress. Core WordPress is also given away to all our competitors, right? It's open source. Everything we put in there, we just added real-time collaboration. So VIP started a project that was you and me, we can be in a post at the same time, like Google Docs. So 22, 23 years into WordPress, they finally adding real-time collaboration. So we just got that out, WordPress 7.0. So that gets out the door. But all the stuff we do kind of goes into WordPress and gets given away to the planet. Along with that is the fact that I would say WordPress's default is to like be open and fast and no guardrails, like go, go, go. And VIP's job for our customers is to like lock those things down. And I don't mean penetration testing, security, ports, things like that. I mean, here's a great example. In the WordPress block editor, which is, I would say the biggest strength of WordPress to date is the block editor. It's just amazing, how you collaborate on blocks and what they do with this block editor. In there, you can go put a headline in. I could put a headline in. And the default thing for WordPress is choose any font you want and infinite colors. So you can have an orange headline and, Comic Sans. I can have a, whatever, purple one and something. It's our job at VIP to say, no, slow down. No, not infinite choices, not whatever. There's brand guidelines, there's style guides, there's like all this stuff. So we're going to actually, I built a governance plugin that goes and like takes that infinite choice and locks it down to match your brand. So now I get 2 colors, 2 fonts and like 3 colors or whatever. And that's it. And they maybe are rule applied, but you're a senior designer. They trust you a bit more. Maybe you can have 30 colors and 6 fonts, right? So what you talk about, like the accelerator, go, 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 and the brake, hold on. Let's make sure this is brand safe. Let's make sure it's in our voice. Let's run these checklists. That's kind of the angle that we have. We're not building WordPress. We're making it work at scale.
It reminds me a lot of a conversation I had with Christian Lund, and he is one of the co-founders over at Templify. And what they do is they basically standardize like business documentation for lawyers, accountants, whatever, right? I'm sure you've heard of them before as well. And it reminds me, like, a big thread of that conversation was talking about the SaaS apocalypse, right? And how do you kind of build a moat between yourselves and all of these top AI companies? And I'm wondering what your thoughts on that are as well. WordPress has been around forever. How do you kind of build a moat between where you are now and what features Anthropic's going to build in a month from now?
Right, because Anthropic does keep threatening to just wipe out lawyers, like the whole career of doing law. Like that's going to just be a button on our homepage. All right, so you said a couple things. You said something about how WordPress does this. So I want to touch on the WordPress angle for a second, and then I want to talk about the future of work, which is probably the biggest part of this conversation and the most exciting thing to talk to you about. And it's what those people are dealing with. It's this radical transformation of work and like what is a company? Like it goes right to your why, right? Like why does my law firm exist? Why does Automattic exist? WordPress VIP, right? So the WordPress part first is interesting because some of those things we're talking about are schema standardization documents, right? A checklist, a brand guidelines checklist. One of the most powerful things about being one of the biggest, most successful open source projects in the history of ever is like 43% of the web runs on WordPress. So if there's a spec coming out, a standard coming out, WordPress has always supported web standards from the old web standards project in the 90s, the 2000s, I guess, all the way through like, accessibility. Like they're always, the platform has been built on these really good foundational like protocols and like agreements and standards and things like that, right? And so when something like LLMs.txt comes out, like if WordPress doesn't adopt it, like it may not make it. But if we adopt it, half the web just adopted it and it becomes a thing. So I think there's a lot of power and a lot of responsibility in being a platform that is like a kingmaker, like instantly chooses like what wins and what doesn't win. Like it does a very good job of that. And I think we've tried to follow standards and things like that. Now you take that standard to today. I don't know if you're like using OpenClaw and like an Obsidian vault with markdown files, or like if it's like fully like bought in on the whole thing. But if you think about what does it take for me to take my job and explain it to a bot, to explain it to my kid, an intern, whatever, but let's say a bot, I have to document what I know and the context that lives, like plan me a trip to Barcelona, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into plan. We had a work meetup there recently, and I'm like, certain airlines I like to fly, certain seat I like to sit in, certain whatever. I have certain preferences. I don't want to fly 30 hours. Like, could I get there in 12? So there's a bunch of parameters. And how do you describe that? And so I've been thinking for a couple of years now, every decision I make, how much tea am I going to pour? How am I going to, what do I do next on my day, on my calendar? What are all the things I would need to document to be able to hand this off to someone else to do, whether a person or a bot? And what you're talking about, those guidelines, those checklists, those things, they're these like obsidian vaults for your, agent harness that are keeping the context and learning as you go. And if you can take your business, I like to go back to fundamentals, right? Like I said, go back in history to think about how you got here. Like, what is a media business? Well, we amass attention and we sell it. We don't sell things. We don't actually sell anything. It's a very weird business. They're a couple hops away from the sale. We get a bunch of people together and then we get them to go buy a movie ticket from you or a pair of sneakers or whatever. So we're a couple hops away from commerce, but we amass that audience. And then that's what Twitter comes along and does. They amass the audience before the publishers, before the stores. But at some point, somebody has to buy something. And so you do these equations and you think about, like, what am I in the job of doing? So now you just go back to a media company, gossip, tabloid newspaper. What's their job? And like, if you can go and define why they exist, what their voice is like, we're more silly, but we're never mean, but we're not boring like a businessy thing. Like, if you can encapsulate all of that into a set of rules, and then you can look at the jobs they're doing to create their content every day. So we think about content management systems. So we think about like a factory level workflow and a unit production workflow. How many stories do I have to do a day? UK Sun maybe does, 2,000 stories a day. Great. So on each one, how do I get them from 0 to 100? So you have a factory workflow and you have a unit workflow. If you can define the hundreds of steps at each of those levels, what do I need to know to make a decision, to do an action, to write a headline, whatever? Then when I do it, was it good? Was it in my voice? Like, validate and all that before and after decisions. If you can define that whole thing, you've just built a machine that is your business. It's a digital representation of your business. And every piece of work that gets done, every micro piece of work can either be done by an expert human for a lot of money, a cheap intern for not much money, a frontier model for a lot of money, a medium model, a locally hosted open source model. And you can just go through and sort of do the arbitrage on how do I accelerate what I'm doing and turn this into a machine where I can cost optimize and go faster, but with humans involved. Anyway, I think a lot about the future of work and that machine too much.
The way you speak is very much from like a first principles basis, right? You take things down into this really granular state. And what I'm wondering is, since your time as CTO of WordPress, how has that approach influenced the product?
Man, I'd like to think that I feel like I don't influence much. Nobody listens to me. I don't feel it though. No, I feel like there's just so much to do, right? So first principles, it's very flattering because I would say that the biggest sort of, I don't know, most successful genius investors, billionaires, whatever, always talk about first principles. So if you're picking that up from me, that makes me feel really good that maybe I do that. I think it goes back to that, like, I'm trying to like dumb things down. I think of things in terms of maps. So I'm always trying to visually reduce a problem. And it is very hard to take something that's, 20 dimensional and show it to you in a little 2-dimensional, thing on paper, like a little graph of like a business model canvas or a process flow diagram or some kind of a state machine that just shows you like, or marketing targets and, timelines and stuff like that. I only think of things visually in maps. So I try to just take all the complexities of the world and just say, no, step back, hold on. What are we trying to do here? Okay. And one of the frameworks that I did get to infuse into WordPress VIP was, I said, look, at the end of the day, why do people need a content management system, right? So first principles, like you said, and you need a content management system because you want to change your website. If you just had to make a website once, you don't need a CMS. But if you have to change it every day or tens of thousands of times a day, great, you need a content management system. Now that content management system there's two ways to change a website. You can change a website through code or through content. The reason we built CMSs was so non-coders could go change the website. So there's your content people. So forms or whatever. LLMs actually make it so anybody can code. What is a CMS needed for now? If anybody can code and they can just talk to a thing and a page comes to life that's interactive, that's pretty crazy. But anyway, code and content. And those are the two ways you change your website. And what's the point of your website is to grow your business. What does every business have in common? They have conversions. At some point, somebody goes from not a customer to a customer. People go through a funnel. They go through stages. So I basically, one of the frameworks I brought to VIP or like thought of when I was here, like I didn't bring it. I didn't know I knew this, but anyway, was code, content, and conversions. And there are 3 types of users that we build tools for. The conversions people love Parsley, analytics. How's my stuff performing? They don't write anything. They don't code. The developers love the code things. How do I deploy? How do I make these things more efficient? How do I, scale? How do I migrate data? Whatever. And then the content people. How do I write a couple thousand stories a day And the ones that I write, I know have a good headline. They're going to get better reach. I'm going to grow my business. So those things go hand in hand. But like I break something down simply in a silly way to an equation like that. Your CMS is code plus content equals conversions. And those are the 3 areas you need to focus on. And I had 3 great product managers like focused on each of those things. You wake up, how can I serve people who make conversions? That's all I care about. Code, content, conversions. Yeah.
It's interesting when you speak about maps as well, your eyes flirt to the top as if you're visualizing the map.
No, you're right. There's like a left to a right. And I can't, and I grew up in Brooklyn, so I can't not talk with my hands. But I'm like, and this one's here. And then now they're here. And so I'm always like, it's very important to, so you talk about first principles. There's another way to say it, which is mental models. And people talk about I have a mental model in my head that is not a picture. It's a bunch of crap that's connected through, electrons or like neurons, you know what I mean? Like electricity. And I need to convey that picture that's not a picture in my head to you. So you and I can agree on a thing and we can, collaborate. And you're not, you didn't miss my point or whatever. I need to sell you. I need to inspire you. I need to something you, right? And for you to convey that invisible, amorphous cloud of connected junk in my head into your head, I think the only way you can do it is through a picture that guarantees we're on the same page. I don't think words do it justice.
I want to talk about problems for a second. One of these models you're mentioning is called content conversions, right? But that gap between content and conversions is changing, right? Google's search algorithm is massively changing. The way people find content, website traffic is going down massively. It's changing to AI search engines instead. What's your role in that? Because ultimately they're hosting their website, their content on your platform. So what do you do to help there? Like, how are you approaching that problem?
Yeah. When you were talking before about bot blocking and stuff, it just reminds me that we have two large types of customers. You can very easily split WordPress VIP, the sites we host, into 2 equal groups. One is media and publishing, right, where content is the product, and the other is marketers. So Salesforce.com runs on our platform, Jeffries, financial services, all that stuff. The content is not the product. And it is wild to watch their reaction to this existential threat of sorts that's only an existential threat to one of them. So bots coming and taking all of your content is an existential threat to media and publishers who the content is the product. And if humans don't see it and see ads or subscribe, they just gave it away for free and like they're toast. But marketers have the opposite effect. They're like, no, don't keep the bots out. How do you let them come in harder and like, I want to push my stuff at them. I want them to ask, what's the best podcast on like the future of AI and work? And I want the ChatGPT to say, well, clearly it's AIY podcast with Liam, right? Like that's you're running towards, as a marketer, you're running towards the bots and throwing your stuff at them and like, please pay attention to me. And everybody else is like, put up the shields, lock it down, keep them out. So that is a funny position to be in where you're building for both of these. And one of them is like embracing and the other is like, running away. I don't know that either one of those is, a perfectly pure way to react to this. But you mentioned how devastating this, like Google zero, as your natural Google traffic goes to zero. They already lived through Facebook zero. Facebook used to be like 30%, like you would get a lot of clicks for things, and, or they called it like organic clicks or whatever. It was like in the 30s, and it was in the 10s, and it was in the 2s, and now it's zero. If you don't pay for your brand to be seen on Facebook because of the numbers, I share so much stuff, your friends share so much stuff, mathematically, there's now hundreds of millions of pieces of content I could see a day. There's no way on earth I'm going to naturally see yours like by mistake, unless you pay, right? So brands have to pay to see me. Google's doing the same thing. I think that the AI, I don't think people see AI. I think you just said people see AI as a threat, and I don't think they are taking it seriously enough and see it as big as it's a bigger threat than I think what you said, because it really does change everything. When I load up a notebook LM with a bunch of research stuff, I'm throwing in 15 YouTube videos, I'm throwing in hundreds of articles, whatever. I'm reading none of those. I'm clicking on no ads. I'm subscribing to nothing. I'm not watching the videos. I'm not watching a video ad. Like, I'm just putting them in there and saying, bots, go look at this. So you are talking about something that is so huge, like radically transforming that Cloudflare talked about this a lot, right? Like there used to be like a give and a take. I scrape your content, I give you some pages, some visitors. Now it's like I just scrape your content and I do it bigger than ever and I send you nothing. And it's too bad. And that's obviously not sustainable. If you put all of our media customers out of business, I mean, we'll still be here, but like we want them to win. We like them. They chose us. Like we have a lot of friends at these places. Like I said, I'm publishing in my blood. So I want them to win. You just have to go back to business fundamentals, first principles. Why does somebody choose New York Post over Daily News over anything else in that city for their sports news? Like, why are you choosing one of those things? And you just have to be very good about finding ways to have a direct connection with your audience. And that could be in-person things. It could be your business morphs, things change. None of this traffic stuff is guaranteed, any of these sources, they come and go. So, I mean, but the New York Post, right, was created by Alexander Hamilton. It's like a couple hundred, more than 200 years ago. It's been here a long time. I don't think it's in danger, but I do think that the reason it survives and the way it survives is by adapting and saying, okay, what worked for the last 30 years on the web just evaporated. It's all right. We've seen this before. Like this is, TV came along and killed newspapers, but it didn't really, right? How do we survive? And I think that knowing your business, having a direct relationship with your customers, those things never change. Doesn't matter. AI, no AI. It's fundamentals.
You mentioned the New York Post, you mentioned New York Times. I think about trust, credibility, authority. If you were, say, for example, the CMO of a publishing company or a podcast like mine or a newsletter like ours, what would you focus on over the next 2 years? How would you kind of bulletproof us?
So I would just, I mean, I've seen people do this, like Skift, the travel brand. Friends of mine do that. They came in out of nowhere and just own the whole conversation, the space, the everything. And they do it because they obsess over a certain kind of customer. They say no to everything else and they just do whatever that customer needs, whether that's a conference or a website or a newsletter it could be a print magazine. Like who cares? I just think you have to like know what you're going for and just obsess over your customer, which is a stupid piece of advice because of course you should, right? Like it doesn't matter what your business is, you should. Um, but I do. It's very funny. I think about those. I think about long like brands, like what brands are still going to be here in the future, right? I think Google is selling like 100-year bond. Like people are supposed to think like 100 years from now, their grandkids are gonna, I don't know, get back money from Google. People are betting that Google will be here at 100 years. That's a long time. A lot can change. I've seen 200-year-old newspapers go out of business. There was one of them that was like, I don't know, phone hacking scandal, stuff like that. And it was gone, right? Like these things happen. And I wonder, like Disney, like that guy's name lives on. I think it's going to keep living on. It's on top. It's buying other things. But what would make it so that Disney's not here in 20 years? I don't know. I think a lot about legacy. I think a lot about permanence. I think a lot about 100 years, none of us are here. What is still here? It's a morbid thing to think about, but I don't know. So my advice is the fundamentals, like it's, buy low, sell high, make more than you spend, right? Like that, invest in your product, love the heck out of your customers, but know who your good customers are.
I'm curious about you as an individual. I look through your work history and I see so many different roles on LinkedIn. Founder, CEO, co-founder, doing this, and now you're in this like CTO role. How is that transition between doing things for yourself to doing things for other people?
Yeah, it's a funny question. It's the biggest thing my wife asked me when I was doing this. Like, so I've run my own things and I get to, but I've got to, do every role. Like I'm a marketer and a salesperson and a technology person. And again, probably not good at any of them. Therefore I can do all of them, right? Like I'm not too much of one of them. And coming into this was really, I'd known Matt Mullenweg for a long time. So, we've been friends, but we hadn't really worked together, but we respected each other. And he said, I've got some stuff I could use your help on. Could you come in and help work with me on these things? And my wife's biggest question was, I don't know if you can work for someone else. You know, like there was an investor retreat in the Hamptons years ago that I went to, and they give out these T-shirts that are from Ted Turner, the CNN creator and all that, Turner Broadcasting, all that. And it was a quote which said, "My son tells me he's an entrepreneur. I guess that's what they call you when you don't have a job." And it was like Ted Turner, and like that was his quote. And I've always thought of like entrepreneurs as people who are unhireable, unmanageable, right? Like they just can't have a boss. And so that's my wife's biggest question. Could you do this? And I've done fine. I'm still here, like it's worked out. what I will tell you what I loved about it and what I instantly why I liked this, because you're right. I'm used to everybody's here because I raised the money. I'm funding the thing. I'm the person on stage. I invented the product, and they just do what I say. It's very different to come in and have 70 people who are like, you didn't invent this product. You're not the founder. You're not the whatever. I don't have to listen to you. You're my stepdad. I don't have to listen to you. Like that kind of thing, right?
Mm,
Definitely the stepdad syndrome with some of the teams. But what I really loved was not having to be the chief marketing officer, not having to be the chief revenue officer, not having to be the CEO even. Like all that stuff that coming into an executive team brought me, I felt like, not like my little company was acquired, but I felt like I acquired an awesome sales team, a great team of marketers. And I just like, I can give them advice. I can participate in things, but I don't have to like lose sleep over that anymore. I'm
mm.
thrilled. So I'd say that the strong performers I've worked with have been the best part of this.
You'd spent most of your career competing against WordPress, and now you're part of them, sort of. Is that the
You're not
right
wrong.
framing?
No, no, keep going. Ask the question. Yeah.
I guess my question looking back with how successful WordPress is now, right? It's like a multi-billion dollar company. If you were to go back, would you change how you do things?
So first strong answer is no. There is nothing, dumb things I've done, good things I've done, nothing I regret. Like there's literally nothing I would change because I feel like if you did, everything else would change and you'd miss out on all the good stuff. So I regret zero. I would change nothing. I would not go back in time and change anything. There are 7 or 8 things I can think of that I wish I hadn't said, but like that's, those are like small things. I don't think about them very often. But when it comes to competing with WordPress, so I had been building CMSs for 7, 8, 9 years before WordPress existed. I met Matt in year 1 of WordPress. I was on stage. He was in the front row. We're at South by Southwest. We were like asking the audience stuff. It was actually really cool. And like, how many of you do this? And like a bunch of hands go up. And how many of you do like the harder version of this? And only a couple hands. And then I asked, how many of you do the hardest version of this? One person in the room was like him. I was like, what's your name? He's like, Matt. So we literally met in a moment when I was talking about some technology stuff. And he was new. So it was year 1 of WordPress. And so I thought WordPress would be around 5 years and then be gone. Everybody shuts down CMSs. It goes away. And as it failed to die and got bigger and bigger, I realized the reasons why it got bigger. And I like to say I built a couple dozen CMSs, sold some of them for millions of dollars, made a bunch of money making these things, like built a bunch of great brands. Matt made one CMS. He's given it away for 20 years and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Like it's completely, and I joked that maybe I was pricing mine wrong. Maybe I should have given it away for free. But that's not why this worked. I did launch a product in 2009. I was on stage at a TechCrunch event, and we had like all these famous people, like a CTO of Facebook, and these famous investors, and the CEO of Twitter. Like all these people were on stage grilling me about my stuff. And when I was talking about that CMS at the time, which does not exist anymore, and what I said was, "This is like the last CMS you'll ever need." That was like the tagline for it. It's the last CMS. One of the people, Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn founder, said to me, he goes, yeah, there's no such thing as like the last CMS. People use you and 2 years later, they're going to switch. That's just what people do. But I do like that you're open sourcing this thing and it's got a plugin architecture because those are 2 keys to longevity. And then we ended up having customers throw money at us. We didn't really fully open source and we just like did our thing and it worked out great. But when I look at WordPress, open source, plugin architecture, we were trying to like catch up and model ourselves after that. That's the reason why it survived, because it's kind of like the ship of Theseus of CMSs. There's no code in today's WordPress that looks anything like code from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. They just constantly build parts and it's plugins. None of our customers run an app that looks anything like anybody else's app. It's got a little bit of like the same, like maybe if you squint, maybe the same CMS, but they're radically different. So I just think that I didn't expect it to survive. It did. And it did for those reasons, which somebody else told me are good reasons, but I didn't follow them.
When I was researching you beforehand, I found some information that maybe you're also running a startup of your own as well. Is that correct?
Not today, but I have.
Not today. I can't remember. It was just coming up in my research, but I can't remember the name of it. But that you were building something else, but maybe I'm wrong with that.
Yeah, not today. I mean, I'll be very candid. Like I'm so deep into thinking about the future of work and automating
Mm.
things for AI. And I don't know if that's a CMS only problem
Mm,
or that's like a, I don't know, future of work level problem. So I do think about these things, but no, the last thing I had was a social video startup, which is
okay.
what Automattic acquired, and that's how I got here. Oh, I'll tell you a cool thing about that since you asked. Ooh, this is actually, I don't know, I didn't talk about this publicly, but if I had, this would be why you were thinking that. So we built a product for about 6 years, me and a co-founder. And it was like, it was this way to like share a link and get back videos from people and basically like have stars and fans interact. So you could interact with your audience, get brand safe UGC videos and have tons of them come in and, it's all good. And make shows with people, things like that. And we worked on that for about 6 years. When we got to Automattic, to WordPress VIP, there was really no team to maintain it and we weren't going to sell it. So we just shut it down. Like we literally couldn't like keep the servers on. It didn't make any sense. So we're like, sorry, everybody, we'll just pack it up and go home. And I wondered a couple months ago, could I take that same co-founder and one more person and the three of us go away and spend a week together? And could we, in 4 solid days, rebuild that whole business as a WordPress plugin?
Mm,
And we did. So this is like a couple weeks ago. We went to Tokyo and we just like had a room and we like had great food all night, but we just worked all day long. And in 4 days, we recreated a 6-year product. And I think it's better than what we had. We have like a native Mac app combining videos of branding and themes and stuff on top of them that ties into your CMS, which is WordPress. So we basically reinvented an entire thing into that in 4 days with somebody who'd never heard of the business really or used it, and one person who was really familiar. And the rule was, we don't code. Like literally, bring me your open clause, bring me your Claude code, bring me your bots, bring your whatever. But like, and so it was very funny. I actually brought my Mac Mini with me with my bot. My co-founder Max left his Mac Mini at home, and I'm like, that's a dangerous thing to do. Leave your bot running at home. You're gonna have to call your wife, Victoria, and wake her up at like 3:45 in the morning and say, "Can you go into the room and reboot my Mac Mini?" Right? Like it's very dangerous. And then the third person there, Christoph, one of my favorite people I've worked with for more than 20 years, off and on. He was like Claude code, no bot, no whatever. And between the three of us, really between the two of them and me just sitting there like feeding them, um, we rebuilt the whole thing. So, it's kind of funny. You can do anything now. I don't know what would excite me enough to go do that again. I will tell you, not raising money from investors, not taking a salary, things like that, not exciting.
mm,
But the future of work I think it's bigger than content. And I really, really tried to turn that off when I go to sleep because I'm obsessing about how do you describe work into these documents? What is the soul of a company? What is the core of your business? So what's that equation that your business does, whether you're media, marketer, making donuts, whatever the thing is, what's that thing you do? What's your factory look like? And how do you document it and describe it so you can automate the heck out of it and scale it, infinitely? So we'll see what happens.
how often are you building or using these tools or playing with these tools like OpenClaw and Claude Code and so on?
Yeah. So remember I said all my customers feel like they're not doing enough and they're always behind.
Mm,
I feel so much worse than that. I don't know if you ever watched The Good Place, the TV show The Good Place.
a little bit,
The
I know all
like,
of it.
yeah. So there was this helper sort of bot, Janet. She's not a robot, but she's like a helper. And there was a thing in there where they could like kind of reboot them and just reset them and start them over again. There was a button on the beach. You just hit it, and then a new bot would appear with like basically from scratch. I'd find myself doing that with my own OpenClaw, where like I get to a point and I'm like, nah, hit the button, reset it, kill it, bring it up again. It's a very morbid, weird, twisted sci-fi thing to do. But no, I don't have enough time. I have like my calendar. It's calendar Tetris. Like people just
Mm,
jam things in there. I have so much stuff to do, and these conversations are good. Like this is wonderful. Like you think you're getting a guest on your show. I think I get to bounce ideas off of somebody smart who knows a lot of other people who I don't know and get
mm,
feedback. And like when you're into something, I'm like, okay, good. I will tell you how this is actually what I do for a living. I workshop ideas live with people. And I feel like what I do going from customer conversation to customer conversation is no different than a politician or a comedian. So if you're a politician, you go out on the road, you do like what do they call them, like a rally or whatever, like you get the crowd together and you just say crazy stuff and you see what sticks. And if you say like, no more taxes or whatever, people go nuts. They're like, great. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to use that again next week, next show. Comedians do the same thing. They take an hour and a half, 2 hours of content out on the road. They try different jokes and they just see like, if I say it this way, or if I change the character, do I get a bigger laugh? If I pause, like what happens? And they're constantly workshopping, and they will then get that thing fine-tuned down to a 50-minute Netflix special. But they've done it by taking it to 30, 40 cities and seeing what worked and what didn't work. And I feel like I have this, I'm very lucky that I get to spend my day not doing the bot stuff that I want to do and I'm stressing out about, not doing the AI stuff and the tech stuff I want to do, but having really good high-level conversations with people and seeing what stuff excites them and seeing what they add to this routine of stuff in my head. And then I take that to the next one. So I just thank you so much for your time. This is oxygen for me.
I appreciate that, and I love the sound of that as well. It's why I do this podcast, is because I love having conversations with interesting people and understanding how they think about the world. But
I'll tell you something that annoys me. So my friend Jason McCalcanis, we went to high school together. We're good friends. He's been doing podcasts for a long time. I was the first guest on his This Week in Startup show back in LA, like, feels like 20 years ago, but it was a long time ago. And it's funny because he and I talk about stuff and I'm like, I know I'm smarter than him, but he gets to talk to so many smart people and like the founder of this and the founder of that. And like, I'm a good interviewer. And then like I sit around him, I'm like, my God, he's like, as much as I've grown as an interviewer or as smart as I am, that show of his is like a never ending business degree of everything cutting edge. And like, he just knows stories about everything. And I'm like, damn it. I was pretty sure I'm smarter than him still. Nope, I'm not. He just knows everybody and everything. And I think without that show, it's not there. You're not using that muscle. You're not, learning all the time. So it is really like the best continuing education thing you could possibly do for yourself at any age. Start a podcast and talk to smart people, whether people watch or not.
yeah, when are we going to hear your podcast?
That's such a good question. So the social video app thing that I made, that I brought back, there's actually a way I can do an async podcast. I can basically send you a couple videos, you answer them, and I can go down threads with you. And you can mention a book and say, well, actually, there's this book, actually a book a friend of mine recommended about, it's about like bots and how they have like a social life together. It's this whole thing. I forget what they call it. I'll look it up. But basically, if you mention this book to me, the next time I reply to you, I actually might have read the book. And now it's something I didn't know. So it's almost like a time travel back and forth async podcast show.
Okay.
So if I can kind of get that thing working, I will have a show.
All right, let me know. Keep us updated.
Yeah, I'll do
I
it.
think I want to finish off with my last question. I ask the same guest, or all my guests, the same question to finish off. I encourage you to take 5-10 seconds before answering, and everyone takes this a different way, and I refuse to provide any further context. Brian, why do you do what you do?
This is a good question. So I think, the things that drive people are never the victories or the good childhood experiences. I think it's all the scarring stuff, the bad stuff that kind of like propels you to go do something, gets you off the couch, makes you driven. There was a point in my life where friends of mine, definitely in high school, would say, I'm the smartest person in the room and the biggest flake. I'm never going to amount to anything. I take nothing seriously. Like a total waste of talent and brain power. And sometime after that, some stuff happened, family things, and a switch went off. And it went off for some friends of mine too, like around the same time. And we kind of bonded over this, where we became like the anchors for our family. We became the driven ones. We became the ones who do that. So I wasn't aware of it until a few years ago. I was talking about like, I'm not really that competitive, whatever. And my wife goes, are you drunk? Like I've never met anybody more competitive than you. Nobody who wants to win, who hates to lose. Like, are you serious? And I was like, I thought I was like insulted. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I thought about it. I'm like, oh God, no, she's right. I am so driven and competitive. And when I think about life and legacy and competition and winning, to me, that's making great kids. I put a lot of time into my kids, getting them to schools, prepping them for auditions, doing whatever the thing is, trying to just pass that on. Because again, 100 years from now, WordPress will still be here. There'll still be a Disney company. Google's bonds will be coming due and they'll be paying people back the money they just borrowed this year. And I want to make sure that like I did right by my family, and I just like shot them up this way instead of like down that way. And
Mm.
I think why I do what I do is to propel my children.
Awesome. Brian, two things. Firstly, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on. This was after rescheduling, and so I appreciate you making double the time. And secondly, people want to get in contact, find out more about you, about what you do. How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, if you want to see a blog post I wrote 2 years ago, go to brianalvey.com. That's what you're going to find there. Brian Alvey on Twitter, Brian Alvey, on X, Brian Alvey on LinkedIn, Brian Alvey everywhere. And then WP VIP for the work stuff, WordPress VIP. Yeah,
Easy.
thank you.
Brian, thank you so much.
This is awesome.